Eligible Bachelors is the 10th episode of the first season of the Looney Tunes show, and I think this is the most well-written episode so far. There's a lot going on, there are a lot of different emotions, a lot of different sentiments. Visually, it's absolutely gorgeous. We have a very different setting, and I rather enjoyed it. It starts off with Bugs and Daffy kind of reluctantly agreeing to auction themselves off as eligible bachelors, and Lola bids on Bugs and Granny bids on Daffy. And I loved seeing Granny in this. We get a little glimpse of Sylvester and Tweety as well, which is great. And it's all about Bugs spending time with Lola and Daffy spending time with Granny. And Lola and Bugs end up going to Paris, and we see a lot of iconic Paris architecture, the Louvre, the Eiffel Tower. We get to see all of these in animation, and it's an absolute delight. Visually, it is a really fun episode, and Lola is very full on, and Bugs is maybe not initially keen to be spending this much time with her, especially not keen to be leaving the country to spend this much time with her, but when in Paris, and I really liked how it played out. I thought it worked very well. It was a really sweet story. Daffy is having a very, very different experience, because Daffy is actually helping Granny clean the attic initially. And this will be a spoiler for something that happens later on, so I'm just going to say spoilers from now. Initially, Daffy thinks that he's just been bought or bid on or purchased. I'm not entirely sure what the technical term is. I've never bid on a bachelor auction before. But he believes that Granny did this just so she had somebody to help him clean the attic. And while they're cleaning the attic, Daffy is initially bored. But then Granny starts to tell him about a time that she was in Paris during the Second World War. And we get to see bits of, well, some of the tensions of the Second World War, shall we say, in animation. It's not something I expected to see in the Looney Tunes show, and it works very well. Granny's story was maybe not the most fascinating, but I did like it, and I like having this little backstory for Granny and learning a bit more about the character. I don't consider this to be canon. I don't think, off the top of my head, I can't think of any other cartoon that references Granny being in the Second World War, largely because when Granny was created, it was not that long after the Second World War. In fact, I'm going to check that. Yes, the first one was Canary Row in 1950, so not tremendously long after the Second World War, but certainly within the context of Eligible Bachelors, it worked quite well. I thought it was a pretty decent story. I didn't love every second of it, but in general, I enjoyed it. And we find out at the end, after Daffy has actually enjoyed himself, I like the fact that it's saying, you may not think this is going to be a fun thing, but give it a chance. You never know what the experience is going to be like. And he ended up actually enjoying listening to Granny's tale. And we learn at the end that Granny didn't just bid on him to help clean the attic. She actually really wanted the company as well. And she appreciated having that company with Daffy. So I thought that was really sweet and really moving. And interestingly, even though the part with Granny's story wasn't my favourite, I think the bits with Daffy and Granny were actually some of my favourite bits in the episode as a whole. That might sound contradictory, but hopefully you know what I mean. That being said, the bits with Lola and Bugs were delightful as well. Absolutely no complaints with them. The whole thing was really creative, really well done. Definitely quite a fresh concept, and I thought it worked quite well. Eligible Bachelors is a pretty great episode of the Looney Tunes show.